Good morning, everyone. Welcome. I'm so glad you could join us for week 4 of the 2026 WTS Northeast Regional Conference. I know everyone is hopping on hopefully soon, so I will give a little bit of time here as our attendees are joining. And I hope everyone's having a great Friday. I know here in central Pennsylvania, it is very, very foggy. So I know some of you are dealing with snow from recent weather events in the Northeast, and some of the snow melt down further to the south of our region. So we have a whole mix of weather here. I am excited to get started because today we're wrapping up the Navigating the Northeast virtual conference, this series, with our final session titled Women at the Helm, Trailblazers and Owners Steering Transportation. This week is great to wrap everything up about leadership in tough spaces, leadership behind the scenes, leadership that's shaping the industry, and where we're heading next. Next slide, please. I'm Crystal Ann Deerdorf from I'm going to say WTS Central Pennsylvania chapter, and I am owner and senior vice president at Susquehanna Civil. I have the privilege of serving as the WTS Northeast Region Council Chair, and I really appreciate welcoming all of you joining, and would like to welcome you here and taking time out of your very full schedules to be part of this WTS community industry event today. I would also can you go? Yep. I just want to give a shout out to ITE. We have been have the ability to co-host with ITE Northeast District, and this collaboration helps us provide PDHs for folks who want to get them, and there'll be more information about that later. And this partnership with ITE kind of also talks about the region collaborating together. And I have some thank yous to make, some very important thank yous. And for some reason, they are not in this. Oh, yes. So I definitely want to thank all the volunteers, the planning committee, the WTS international staff who all help bring this series together, because events like this don't happen without a lot of behind the scenes dedication. And we're really appreciative of that support. This conference would not have been possible without the leadership and vision of our WTS Northeast Region Vice Chair, Lori Chinoy, from the Boston chapter. And today's session champion, Pat Padallo from the Connecticut, helped pull everything together. And without Abigail Meyer from the Delaware chapter to support our registration for this multi-day event, which was no small feat with over 350 registrants. So we really appreciate all the collaboration. I did want to comment on this map. This is a neat slide that shows how connected our Northeast region really is, because our chapters, there are 18 of them, stretch from Baltimore, Philadelphia, the whole way up to Canada, including Montreal, Toronto, and Southwest Ontario, the 3 current Canadian chapters. So we have representation in multiple countries, variety of states, and we're glad to be here together today. So even though we all have different systems, agencies, markets, a little different, but we're all connected and committed to advancing women and strengthening the transportation industry. So I think that's great. Next slide, please. We're going to go over a couple of quick housekeeping items before we jump in. We ask that you answer questions through the Q&A feature of Zoom. The chat should be open. We're hoping it works. We won't be monitoring the chat, but you're welcome to say hello, say where you're from, and in the chat. But any questions, we ask that you please put them through the Q&A feature. We will then monitor them, and then when there's time, we will bring up those questions if time allows. I also want to remind everyone that the panelist bios, we have wonderful panelists today. Their bios were in a PDF attached to the meeting invite. So please feel free to reference and read those details. We will not be getting into all the bios in lots of detail. So we wanted you to have the opportunity to read about each of our panelists. So that should be in the meeting invite as an attachment. Next, for those keeping track of professional credits, PDHs, and AICP credits, we will have those available. So there is a link here in a website that we're going to try and put into the chat for the AICP credits, and the PDH link will be coming soon. So we'll be following up with all attendees afterwards. Additionally, these sessions are being recorded and will be on YouTube after the conference. So we will be getting those uploaded hopefully later today. And as part of our follow-ups, we will share that location. Next slide. Yes. So like I said, this is the last of our four-week conference, which has explored a range of perspectives across the Northeast. We've talked about youth engagement, people first approaches, resiliency, climate, but today we close out focusing on women leading and owning within transportation. Oh, is that my music? I didn't try that if that was me. That was very inspiring right there. So each week we've built, and together we're going to finish up today with 2 panel sessions. The first session, next slide, please, is called Hard Hats, High Stakes, Women's Steering Innovation in Non-Traditional Corners of Transportation. And we're very fortunate to have Dana Hatchett who will be our moderator. Dana brings decades of experience with complex transportation programs, and she has an outstanding group of panelists. So together they're going to talk to us and share things. So I'm going to turn it over to Dana to get started with our first panel session. Thank you, everyone.
Good morning, and thank you. Hi, good morning. Thank you. I've struggled with opening remarks. I really started looking at the title, and this is coming from a week of, I guess, heightened looking at women standing, what was going on with the women's hockey team. And it kind of started bothering me that this still says non-traditional corners of transportation instead of historically non-traditional corners of transportation. So I'm not going to take a lot of time in the intro because these women are amazing and I want to get into the question and answer. But each one of these women represents Sanchita, Krissa, and Elizabeth represent a different corner within our industry, and still distinctly having to be the trailblazer and set up why we belong. We do have allies, which we have to continue to build our allyship, but we still have more to go. And these are very important conversations with that. These are important conversations to recognize how far we have come and to celebrate that and to celebrate those that have supported us coming this far, but to recognize that we still have a ways to go and to help those that are aspiring so that this title in the future no longer says non-traditional roles. So I'm going to kick it off to Sanchita, and I think we're going to take down the slide. When we were doing our introductions to each other, their stories were amazing. So I wanted to give each woman a minute or two to briefly explain about how they got into the industry and where they are right now.
Thank you, Dana. Good morning, everyone. I'm Sanchita Jimenez. And first, I'd like to thank WTS Northeast for this incredible series and the opportunity to be part of it. I'd also like to shout out our moderator, Dana Hecht, because you are an amazing leader, mentor, and friend. And I'm so honored to be here today with my esteemed co-panelists, Krissa and Elizabeth. We all come from different walks, but we all have relatable experiences to share with you today. So just a little bit about me. I'm a civil engineer. I've spent the last 25 years in rail transportation, everything from conventional rail systems to fully automated driverless systems, both in the public sector as well as the private sector. I really cut my teeth on delivering the JFK Air Train at Kennedy Airport in New York. I worked on this project from when it was a proposal and a bid, all the way through construction, testing, commissioning, and into operations and maintenance. With that, I took that experience to start up the Up Express for Metrolinx in Toronto, Canada, a system that runs from downtown Toronto to the airport. I would say throughout my career, the constant thread has been my focus and passion around safety and people. And I believe that safety has to be intrinsic in everything we do, be it construction, operations, or even policymaking. So in my current role as Director of Safety Management for the Port Authority, I have the great privilege and responsibility of ensuring that we weave in safety and it becomes integral to everything that we do. In my spare time, I volunteer as a judge for high school debate competitions, and I recently joined a book club. But I would say my most important work is being a girl mom to my two daughters who inspire me and keep me humble every day. Thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
Good morning, Dana. Thank you for hosting this very important panel, and I want to thank WTS for inviting me to participate. Well, Dana, I think your leadership speaks for itself. When I was a young painter, hard hat, coming right out of college, I wish I had someone like you who could coach me. But going to introduce myself as first who I am today. I'm here on behalf of the Building Trades Employers Association. We are a contractor association. We represent many of the builders that are building our skyscrapers or subways, hospitals, office buildings. We have employers that represent over 100,000 workers. And so we have general contractors and subcontractors, specialty trade contractors, many MWBEs. And when I was in school, I wasn't sure about what I wanted to do. So I majored in art, and in college, I took art restoration and preservation. I really loved buildings and found myself working as an intern in college on building interiors. And to my luck, right before I graduated, Radio City Music Hall had been looking for those who knew how to gild, and that was gold leaf gilding was something I learned in college. And I went to the Painters Union, not knowing anyone there, very green and naive, and brought my whole portfolio and asked for an opportunity to become their member. I was very fortunate that they welcomed me. I felt like a fish out of water in a lot of ways. When I, shortly after graduating college, I entered a job site, the Radio City Music Hall Restoration Project. And I felt so honored to be there, to have this opportunity, but I also was very shy and I didn't want to be recognized. I stood out, of course. I was like one of the only women on the job site, but I think, like looking back, I could have definitely used more women on the job site to feel more comfortable. But that didn't stop me. And so I got involved with my union, and that was the Painters Union. Shout out to IUPAT, represent a lot of different trades. And they encouraged me to run for office. And so a few years into working in construction and on the job site and workforce development, I ran for office and served as a New York City Council member, and then had that government experience, which helps me in the work that I do today, representing the many contractors.
Awesome, amazing. Thank you. We're excited to have you here as well. And Krista, you're muted, Krista.
My bad. I meant to unmute. I'm going to stay unmuted. Thank you, Dana. Yeah, I studied civil engineering as an undergrad, and I was drawn to civil engineering because as a kid, I would draw road maps, kind of knew my neighborhood and would draw it. And I guess it fit. I've spent my whole career in transportation infrastructure, the early part of it doing what a lot of young engineers do, kind of wanting to get their license, going into design. So that was a priority for me. And I started with the Lewis Berger Group. And I was doing, design of highway projects. I thought I wanted to be a structural engineer. So I pursued an opportunity with Berger to become a structural engineer. And then I thought, I don't think I want to do this for the next 40 years. So I took a quarter life crisis, actually, and I traveled abroad and volunteered abroad for a year and a half. And when I came back, I decided to come back as a highway engineer. And I continued with Lewis Berger. And around, I guess, shortly after my daughter was born, I decided I wasn't really growing personally and professionally, and I wanted to go into construction. I had always wanted to go into construction. Um, the transition is hard sometimes, I think, when you start out in design to make a change, but this opportunity came up to move to DOT. And so I switched to New Jersey DOT, which is where I met Dana. And, I was running the Region North Construction and Materials Program for almost 10 years. Worked on some really, truly amazing projects at Louis Berger for design and also at DOT for construction. And about almost 5 years ago, I moved over from NJDOT to New Jersey Transit as the Deputy Chief of Construction Management to help transit grow its capital program, very aggressive initiatives at New Jersey Transit. So that's where I have been. And I am presently the acting chief of construction management and project management.
I can say that I've actually seen Krista grow up.
Thanks, Dana.
And it's been very impressive. So very quickly, and I do think back to when I came into this industry, and where I am today doesn't look anything like where I thought I was going to be. Actually, I didn't even know why I was getting into this industry. So a lot of learning myself and things. Would I do differently? Yes. Would I change where I'm at? Absolutely not. So that leads me to this question. And just really quickly, so that the other questions I think are going to take longer. But if you could go back and talk to your younger self on the first day of your career, now knowing what you know, what reassurance or reality check would you offer to yourself? And we'll start with Krista.
Oh, thank you. The first thing I would say is that I wish I could tell myself that I'm more capable than I think I am, and that the challenges that I was going to face would actually give me the skills that I rely on now. Truly. I didn't trust my instincts early on, but that was something that I grew right to have. I was always humble enough to listen to others with more experience. And I wish I had somebody tell me that sooner, instead of being my stubborn younger self. I have some great qualities, but I have some not so good ones too. I also wish someone had said to me to be proud of myself, but to keep it in check, so that it doesn't affect my ability to learn or grow. And then something that always drove me was when someone told me I couldn't do something, it actually made me want it more. So I wish I could just let myself know that that would be okay, that you were going to hear those things from people where they tell you can't do something or you shouldn't do something, and to just know that you should do it anyway. Go with your gut.
Would you do things differently? Yes. Would you change where you're at? Probably not.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. But just to have those things in mind along the way, as opposed to having to learn them or hope that someone mentioned it along the way. Yeah.
Sanchita.
Oh, okay. Well, I would say, Sanchita, every experience will make you stronger and will compound. And that failure is never going to feel good in the moment. And I know that your fear of failure is born out of a fear of being judged or perceived as incompetent, because you are not. You are resourceful and you'd never give up. So you will fail and you will overcome over and over again. And this is just the necessary path to resilience. And you will own your mistakes and you will find solutions quickly. And this is what's going to build your credibility. So learn to give yourself grace the way that you give to others, because you can't grow without learning from your failures. It's just part of the process. So every experience is going to make you stronger, bolder, and wiser.
That's great. Thank you, Elizabeth.
Well, I grew up in a big family. I'm the 14th of 15 children. So I grew up getting knocked down often physically. and having to learn how to pick myself up. So I give Sanchita a shout out for not being afraid to fail, right? Or of course, none of us want to fail, but taking big risks. And so I too would have even encouraged myself to take more risks than I did, speaking up more when I needed to or felt like I needed to, but was too shy to do so. If I was to give myself that recommendation, I would also give myself a recommendation to value relationships and connections more and stay in touch with people who you care about and how important those connections are. I think more and more the secret to a longevity and a full life is those connections, and that there are people out there that want to help, especially when you're new and you're coming to a job site with so much to learn and often so eager as I was. But, in all, as I had said in the beginning, as a woman coming in to a field where there were little to none, I mean, there were certain jobs where I worked on when I was the only one. It's that reassurance that you do belong there and you need to be there. And you need to get out more the word to younger women in high schools and schools that aren't yet ready to come into the field, that they too should come join you. And then, after working for a number of years, I did that, and I am proud to now still be involved with an organization called Non-Traditional Employment for Women. I sit on their board, and as a young painter in my early 20s, I found them. Many women who do come to the job site had been through their training, but I did come and speak to their group and help in ways. And it's an organization I'm going to stay involved with as long as I can, because they're building the numbers. And sad but true, as Dana mentioned in the beginning, where our numbers are still far too few, both in the trades and also in management. So again, re-emphasizing why WTS is so important.
Great, thank you. So we're going to build on this, and this is for Krista and Sanchita. I think, we all have had our trials and tribulations, and everybody does, regardless of whether you're male or female. You have your trials and tribulations professionally, personally. But I think that sometimes we do encounter situations, where being a woman in a male-dominated industry, where we start to have to make decisions about where we're at, whether it's in the job or in that particular specific job, that role, or in our career, if we're going to stay or we're going to push for change. Where do our energies go? So can you each give us an example where you had that situation where you had to make a career decision, and how are you going to use your energies? Were you going to walk away and pursue something else? And I don't like that walk away. Were you going to use your energies to pursue something else, or use your energies to stay where you're at and make a change? So Sanchita.
Okay, well, I'm going to share a situation that included both of these decisions where I had to stay and push for change as well as walk away. And it's a very deeply personal situation, but I think that this conversation is meant to be honest and vulnerable, and so others don't feel alone in knowing that these situations have occurred. At the time, I was leading one of the largest sites in our portfolio, but I was also 7 months pregnant with my second child. And I had been preparing my deputy to step up, when I went off on maternity leave, to maintain continuity, because that's what we do as leaders. But elsewhere in the organization, there was another site director who was having challenges with the client. And the leadership at the time thought it would be a very convenient solution to move this person to my site. And as a result, reassign me to the site where there was the issues, so that I could restore the relationships with the clients when I returned from maternity leave. And normally, I would have never any issues with helping another site, helping another colleague, helping, the mission. But this particular instance was different. And what was so wrong about it was the way it was handled, because the approach wasn't transparent. And it was presented as a great opportunity for my growth and my career, even though it meant adding an extra 2 hours to my daily commute. And that wasn't considered. But I understood the politics of what was going on at the time. So I was asked to attend a dinner, and in front of a table full of men where I was the only woman, I was put in a very awkward position to accept this arrangement under duress. And this was the moment that I had to stand firm and stand up. And I refused to agree to this. And not only for myself, but what influenced me was that I didn't want to be a precedent, especially for other women rising in their careers, feeling afraid of this type of a situation and what could happen to them. So I had to stand and fight and push for staying in my position. And so after my maternity leave, I did return to my position. And within 6 months, I was offered a fantastic opportunity from the outside to be a part of a mega project, a legacy project. And that's when I knew that it was time to make a change. Because at that point, I had realized that my values were misaligned. And, we all need to know what we're worth and know when it's time to stay and push for change and know when it's time to move on. So that's the story that I just wanted to share, that these things have happened and happened to others. But like you said, Dana, we are all here to support each other and, get to the place where these are not stories that, are that often happening. So that's what I wanted to share.
I'm thinking back to, how long ago that was and how that it was even harder then to turn that down. Did you have trepidation? What did that feel like standing there and doing that in front of everybody?
I tell you, it was a moment where I felt so alone and very humiliated, just by that particular experience. But at the same time, it was very hard because I had been with the organization for a long time. So moving on and changing was also difficult. But sometimes you have to live by your principles and your values and, show others how important it is to stand up for them too.
Did you feel a little bit liberated?
And I did, for sure.
Krista?
Sure. I think for me, and I wouldn't call it walking away, I would call it moving forward.
I realized that was not good terminology.
But I think that first of all, it was I loved working at Lewis Berger. I liked the work I did. I liked the people I worked with. I had some really great mentors. But at some point, I just kind of knew that I was going to be ready and open to an opportunity that would come around. My sister happens to be an engineer too. And coincidentally, she sent me a list of public job postings, and one of them was the regional construction engineer at DOT. They were looking for two, one for Region Central and one for Region South. And at Berger, I was a project manager. I had worked hard over those 10 years. I became a project manager, but I always felt like, and it may have just been my feeling, but I always felt like people wanted me on their team, but they weren't, even though I was running a few smaller projects, people wanted me on their team, but they didn't want to let me run one of the teams. And I just felt like, and it might have just been my perception, but the timing of this other job opportunity felt right. I had actually interviewed with DOT, and I felt I needed to be in the public sector. Like after that interview, I just was drawn to the public sector, like that was going to be the right fit for me. And then I was worried after the interview going, gosh, I don't think I got the job. And I got the call the following week to come back in for a second interview. And it was at that point that I realized, and a lot of times women do this, right? Where we don't feel 100% ready, but we really are, right? And I was more ready than I realized. And it turned out to be one of the best changes for me. I moved forward not only from design to construction, but also from the private to the public sector. And that was when I didn't just like the work, I started to love my work. And I loved going to work every day. I loved what we did at DOT. I love what I do here at Transit. Now, it wasn't that I didn't enjoy what I was doing, but you know, I think being um, I think that design experience helped me do my job at DOT even better. And I think that trade-off, right, the respect among my staff at DOT too, where I had design experience, most of them didn't, and they had construction experience, and I only had the construction experience from the designer role, right? So it was a good trade-off, and it really helped me be successful there. But no, it was definitely an inflection moment of internal struggle too. Do I stay where I know, like, I know this, I can do this, but there's this draw to something challenging and unexpected that ended up being one of the best things, one of the best changes for me ever.
So that's going to lead into the next question, which I'm just going to have you go right into answering, and Elizabeth as well. Because giving context to when Krista came over to NJDOT, she was younger, and most of her staff was, I think maybe you had one woman in your team, right? It was all
Maybe two, yeah, three at most.
Middle-aged, older men
Yes.
have been in the construction for many years.
True.
So, you know, there was that period of have to earn the respect. You shouldn't have to, but you do. So
Yeah.
what was a moment when being the only woman in the room, whether it was that role or another role, actually became a strategic advantage rather than a barrier? And then Elizabeth, will go to you for that question. So Krista.
You want me to start? Yeah. So I'm still one of the only women in the room. That's just what it is, right? And the higher you go in leadership, it tends to be even more recognizable. But I think I think the numbers have been consistent. Like even when I was in my engineering classes, it was, you know, 2 women out of every 10, right? And in most of the rooms I'm in, it's a similar ratio. Um, but it's important, I think, that when I'm in, I'm trying to think of how to phrase it.
Do you want us to come back to you? You want to think about it?
Maybe, yeah, yeah.
Elizabeth?
All right. So I mentioned earlier coming onto the construction site as my first job out of college. Loved it. Would cherish the days I would work overtime because I would get paid extra, time and a half. But also, that first job I stayed on to do the touch up. So I'm just there. Well, there was musicians practicing on stage and the Rockettes for the Christmas show. This is the Radio City Music Hall project. But when that project ended, I went on to another project from the employer, but there wasn't steady work for the restorative painter / decorative painter role. In the union, tried to help, but there weren't like plentiful amounts of jobs like a regular painter would have. And I wasn't good at regular painting. I just didn't want to do it. So I would go from job to job, and I also had a license to be a substitute teacher, just to make sure I was making some money in the slow times. And I knew it wasn't sustainable. So I also was very interested in government and politics. I was involved with the union's political action committee. And there I was one of 2 women. You know, this committee was led by a forward-thinking political action bridge painter named Jack Kittle, who turned out to be one of my early mentors. And from that committee, I was talking about the district I represented, or that I wanted to represent. And it was hard for me even to talk in front of the big group of 30 or so members. There was one other woman. She was a bridge painter, and she was good and supportive. But there I flew, I put out the idea that my district, our council member was not, he was up, he couldn't run again because of term limits, and he was supporting a Republican, he was a Republican, that they didn't look out for the whole district, and then they needed someone who cared about union and worker rights. We needed more union leaders in the city council. And so I was a woman that stood out there in that group. They treated me like a family member and said, yes, you need to run. We need you to run. We need a painter in the city council. And they got behind my campaign in a way that I would not have had legitimacy or any base to run from. And because of their support, I didn't win the first time. I won my primary, so I won out of the Democrats running, but then I didn't come close the first time. I ran again, I lost by 40 votes, and then they supported me each time. The third time I ran, I eventually won. But because I put myself out there, I was noticed by the Central Labor Council, and I was offered an opportunity to work in workforce development. So I came off the construction sites, stayed as a union member, was able to do that until I ran and eventually was elected. But had I not stood out, or I had not put myself out there, I wouldn't be here today doing what I'm doing. And so thank God for those, Jack Kittle at the time, and those whom I stay in touch with today, who's retired, but was a great leader for the whole movement.
Yeah, and that's awesome. And that also goes back to the importance of male allyship, because it is there. And the empowerment of women does not mean the alienation of men, right? So
Absolutely.
definitely just want to reinforce that point. So Krista, again, you, as you said, only woman in the room many times. And did you find a time or a moment where that became a strategic advantage for you?
Yes, I think that's where I found my voice. Do you know, like, because when I stepped into that role at DOT, it was different. There are a lot more women in design than there are in construction. So my work environment in an office setting at Merger was different than my work environment at NJDOT. And I developed my own leadership style. I developed my own communication style. I learned how to find my voice in that setting. There were my first, you mentioned I was younger when I got to DOT, and I was mistaken oftentimes for a civil engineer trainee.
Which is level at DOT, like right out of college.
No.
That's how I started.
Yeah. Yes. So I was, in my early 30s, but being mistaken for being in my early 20s. And here I am, running Region North Construction Materials. So I think it was a shock for everyone too. Most of my colleagues, even, peers in Trenton and through the other regions, were much older than me, including my direct reports. So not only were they men, they were older than me, and there weren't a lot of women represented. But I gotta tell you, the women that were represented were very talented. And I'm super excited about that. That made it easy to make those peer connections as well. But all of that helped me figure out how to navigate those situations. But there is an advantage. I would never, I don't know. I've developed the quality of making sure people know I'm there, right? And you can do that by listening, but you can also do that by strategically adding your own input, ideas, and making sure you're heard. And I think that's what I stepped into at DOT, and that's what I've carried with me. I didn't have to do that as much at Berger.
Let's say I also found my voice by being the only woman in the room many times, and got strength from that. I have to tell you, when you came, I always wore heels. I never wore heels until I moved over into project management, and just to give me height walking into a room full of men. So Cheetah, now we're just going to focus on your experience on the public agency side and operations. Right? So public agencies often operate under intense scrutiny and tight constraints. financially, human, political. How has being a woman in operations, and when I met Sanchita was the GM for JFK Airtrain. Again, not a lot of women in those teams even. So how has being a woman in operations shaped the way you approach high stakes decision making?
Yeah, well, Dana, and the example I was going to share was when I was in that role, actually, because, in operations, you're only as good as your last rush hour. Nobody remembers all the good stuff you did the day before because it's expected. The stakes are high, public confidence, a lot of visibility. So, it could feel like a thankless job, especially for your team when it's just constant and relentless, right? So what I rely on for my decision making is knowing what my North Star is. And what that is for me has always been safety. So when there's any kind of decisions, especially operational, that you're up against the pressure of getting systems back online, getting service running. I remember having a director once that, came into the operations center and demanded the operators get the trains moving. And at the time, we had a block for crews that were out on the tracks trying to get some things fixed. So I had to interject and kind of stand up, for my team at that time and explain why we were doing everything we could to get things moving, but we were going to do it safely always. So, it's those moments where you really have to know and depend on your North Star. You have to have courage in the face of that type of scrutiny and that type of pressure, because it's coming from everywhere. It's coming from leadership, from the client, from the public. But you've got to be strong enough to be that voice for others. And you have to be willing to take the heat and the criticism for your team. You have to just expect that as a leader. I would say, just always have the confidence to do the right thing.
And hearing what you say, and I have such admiration for every one of the women on this panel, which is why I asked them to be on here and share. But I co-chaired WTS New York mentoring for 6 years, and we made a foundation of that confidence because it's a word and it's a concept. But for women, it's been proven scientifically that our brains work differently. And you can rewire how your brains work. And so that's actually, it could be a session on itself on how to do that, because we do have to change. As I think even Krista might have mentioned earlier, you don't think you're ready for a role. You don't check every box. And so where does that come? How did you start? Did you always have a sense of confidence? Did you have to work on that? Did you have to fail to build that confidence? How did you gain that confidence to make those decisions, to trust your North Star?
I think it goes back to what I said in the beginning, is that every experience makes you stronger. And I did learn by failing, and I learned by learning from others. And Krista mentioned the importance of being humble. And I think that that's been really for me throughout my career. I learned from the guys on the shop floor. I learned by going out and seeing what's happening. I learned by getting involved. I learned by asking questions. I learned by not being afraid to um, that I don't know. None of us know everything. So I think that that sense of humility helps me to then gain the confidence I need to be in the spaces where I can speak about things and, have a good understanding of what it takes to do what we do.
Right. And I always say, and I have two daughters, they're grown up now, but two words I told them I don't believe are real: perfect and failure. Perfect is a concept it's not real. So I'm not expecting you to be perfect. Just try your hardest. The other is failure. Has been mentioned throughout. Failure just means you didn't meet your destination yet. So I think that, when we get comfortable with those two things, maybe that helps as well. So we do have a bunch of questions we didn't get to because these answers are amazing. So I'm going to go to the last question because I want to leave time for audience to ask questions of you guys. And the last one, which I think is a really important question. So this is for all of you. Many women, and we've heard that when we all came in, and still we see more that look like us, but not enough. And when we came in, some of us didn't see any that look like us. So many women, we didn't have mentors that look like us. So how did you build your own support system when one didn't exist? And Elizabeth, you kind of started with that, so I'll let you build, kick this one off.
Well, first, I don't want to forget to say this because Sanchita and yourself, Dana, you mentioned the air train. That is my very favorite train in the world. I love taking the air train, especially from Howard Beach as it's moving along and you can see the beautiful basin in Jamaica Bay, especially for taking it. And I live in the Rockaways, so I take it often. You're taking it home and got like a sunset happening. It is very idyllic, and I wonder if the engineers and the designers thought about that when they were putting the train together. But know that. Thank you. So, look, I mentioned earlier that there weren't many women like me doing the work that I was doing, even running for council. I had an old man tell me once that I should be home with my kids. Yeah. And when I was elected to the council, I was elected as the only woman. I'm sorry, the first woman in that district. Well, of course, and it was the first Democrat. But one thing I did as a council member, because I was in a body of 51 members, I decided to take on a leadership role because but I think I'm fortunate that I come from a big family. I said I'm one of 15 kids, but I had a very strong mother, and I have 11 sisters, right? So I'm one of 12 girls, and I'm towards the end. And competitive by nature. I think that just, when you come from a big family, each one of us wants to outdo each other, or at least not fall too behind, or be the worst, or the black sheep, so to say. But I wanted to definitely help other women. I always felt that way. And I think in the council, when I saw that the numbers were slipping, we had a body of 51 and we had 14 women. And I took on the leadership role of being the chair of the Women's Caucus. I was coming to the end of my term, and the good thing about the city council in New York is term limits. And term limits could have limited the number to only 4 council members being women. Most of the women were getting term limited. And so I started an organization with the speaker at the time, who was a woman, Melissa Mark Vaporito, named 21 in 21. So the year was going to be 2021 that we wanted to elect at least 21 female council members. And we built that organization from 2017, inspired by the man we had in the White House, who just really didn't respect women, and we wanted to do whatever we can to have women grow and represent in their community, certainly here in our progressive city. And I do believe that organization was a catalyst to help women, and I know it was, but I do believe we in 2021 made history, being the first time in the city of New York we elected a woman majority council. Not only did we get to the 21, we got to 31. And they picked a black speaker, which was historic. So it was the first time that there was a black speaker and a black woman speaker. And so Adrienne Adams from Queens led, and now she's on the ballot. Now she's running with our governor to be the lieutenant governor, and the first ever 2 female ticket. And so there's a lot we can do when us women put our heads together.
That's great. And so I don't want to cut Sanchita and Chris off, but like I said, I want to do you have like one really quick how you built your support system when one didn't exist, Chrissa?
Yeah, I mean, realistically, most of my mentors were men. I just were, right? But that doesn't mean that I haven't developed great working relationships with peers, internal and external to the companies or agencies I've worked with. It's what you put into it, right? Put out that good energy, get good energy back. I just had someone say that to me the other day. I think she's on this call, but yeah, what you put out is what you get back. But yeah, it's that has been how I've developed my support network, right? Is to just be me, because that's.
I like what you said though, to go outside sometimes too.
Yeah,
but you don't have to stay with
it doesn't have to stay in. Yep.
All right, Sanchita, bring us home and then we'll open it up for 5 minutes.
Well, very similar to Chris, my mentors have mostly been men throughout my career, but I've learned so much from them and they inspired me to be mentors for others. So, you know, the saying, be the change you want to see. So when I had the opportunity, even as a supervisor, I had created these, you know, opportunities and sought out women that were interested in technical roles, but were afraid to kind of take the leap. So you create kind of these opportunities to meet, to support each other, to create the safe space for people to talk about things and kind of work things out. And that's what I've been doing kind of all along. So that's what I would say is really, you know, key for us as leaders is to just keep paying that forward from those who come before us and given us a lot of great guidance and support and mentorship.
And I think in each one of you have said it in your answer is sometimes you do have to manufacture it in a way that's comfortable for you. And then it allows you to pay forward in the future and helps you to build that network to continue to keep giving in this great industry. So that being said, I do not see the question and answer. So I don't know if somebody else can help with that. If there's
There are no questions or in the question and answer box,
Okay.
nor are there any in the webinar chat. So you have extra 5 minutes, or we can proceed to the next session and maybe have more questions at the very end for all.
Yeah, we can give people a bathroom break because I think we ended on a good note.
Dana, this is Lori. I do have a quick question for Elizabeth. One thing that I was so impressed with is that you ran 3 times. Can you just share a little bit about what kind of inner fortitude that it may have taken to run for that 3rd time? Like, what was the inspiration behind that? You know, again, we all talk about failure and overcoming failure. But to me, that took a lot, and yet you won. So anyway, if you can just share a little bit more about how that transpired and what that might have taken, how you got there to make that decision.
Well, thank you. So Lori, it was an interesting election because in 2007, the council member that had the seat got in trouble. And I was just waiting for him to resign. It was a disgrace. He was, you know, charged with a sex crime, and, you know, he finally did resign, and there was a special election, right? And so the second time I ran, it was a special election. So the council member, the person who beat me the first time, then turned out to you know, do a horrible crime, you know, pleaded guilty to a sex crime and then left office. And then there was a special election. And so the special election had different rules than a regular primary and a regular general election. And 4 people ran. And when I lost that race, it was by 40 votes. I mean, 10,000 people voted in that election. So I came incredibly close. It was a 4-way race. And it wasn't a traditional one-on-one. We had 2 Democrats and 2 Republicans running in the way the rules did. And because it was a special election, the city always does this when special elections happen. Then later that year in November, there has to be a regular general election. And no other Democrat wanted to run against this guy that beat me by 40 votes. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to give it another shot because, and guess what? Barack Obama was running for president at the time. It was 2008. And the Democrats were inspired to come out like they never were before. And I really believe that top-down ticket helped me win, because not only did I win, there was another candidate, a male candidate, running as a Democrat for a state senate, and he took out an incumbent that had been a Republican state senator for like 20 years in that race. So it was good energy, but you never, you know, like I never stopped knocking on doors. I never stopped working, and sometimes the stars line up, but that hard work always pays off.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think it's a reminder that like it ain't over till it's over. And yeah, so if anybody needs to hear that today and you're ready to give up on something, That's a great story. And I do see that we have a
Two
couple of
questions.
questions in the chat. Dana, did you want to take it or do you want me to run with it? Is that
Go around with it. Yep.
so Christine McLaughlin asks, what is the best way to find a mentor? I don't know who wants to take that.
I say there are programs like through WTS. I know many companies and agencies have programs. And then I also had this young woman when I was at DOT just walk in my office and ask me, will you be my mentor? So I think, there's formal ways. And then if there is somebody that you really believe would be a good mentor for you, get the confidence to ask them.
I like it. Great. We'll move on to the next question because I see we're running the time. We got less than a minute. What would be your suggestion for an international woman who is facing challenges in finding a position where she can fully utilize her leadership capabilities? So, suggestion for an international woman with challenges in finding a position where she can utilize her leadership capabilities. I don't know if one of you wants to run with that at the end.
I think it's about being yourself. I don't think it shouldn't matter if you've got an international background or, where you're pursuing the opportunity. I think it's important to be yourself. If you're facing challenges finding a position, I think the more you network and talk to people and grow, right? I've not usually been a social media person, but this week I've had a couple LinkedIn posts. But the more you do that, the more people respond and connect, and you might find an opportunity that might allow you to use your full potential.
Great. Well, thank you, Dana.
And I would
don't know
be
if you have.
happy if that
Yep.
woman wanted to reach out because I think understanding specifics could probably help a little bit more too.
Agree.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And on that note, we're going to move on to the next session. I do know that there is one more question, but we could possibly answer either online or proceed with next. So on that note, for this panel session, can you please mute yourself and also turn off video? And I also would like to invite the other presenters to turn on their cameras. So thank you. That said, I do want to invite, excuse me. I do want to invite Gina to introduce the next panel.
Thank you, Pat. Good morning, everyone. My name is Gina Solman. I have substantial experience shaping national programs and policies across transportation and environmental sustainability at the U.S. Department of Transportation and now in strategic consulting. I'm delighted to welcome you to Navigating the Northeast, women-owned firms steering transportation innovation. Today, we are spotlighting 4 remarkable leaders whose firms are shaping the future of transportation across our region. Our conversation will explore founding stories, innovation, resilience, leadership, and the role of women-owned businesses in driving transformative change. We plan to take some questions toward the end, so please use the Q&A function, and we'll let you know when that's available. I'm thrilled to introduce our panelists, each of whom leads a DBE, WBE certified firm. Please note that detailed bios are provided in the meeting links so we can spend more time in conversation. Janice Bergeron is the president and CEO of R&D Consultants. Kathy Campbell is the president and CEO of CDW Consultants. Marian Driscoll is the principal of MLD Services. And Seta Kalasian is the president of SMK Services. So I'm going to jump right into our opening question. If you could Pat, please take down the slides so we can see everyone's faces. It's most appreciated. Okay, so to set the stage, I'd love to hear from each panelist. Janice, Kathy, Marion, and Zeta, each of your firms was born from a moment of decision and courage. Let's go back to those early days. What was the moment or series of moments that pushed you to start your own firm or take over the leadership of your firm? Let's start with Janice.
Um, so mine, I started out, I'm so unconventional. Everybody laughs on my background, but I am a marketing journalism major and I found myself in transportation. And I immediately loved it because it was so different. They don't teach this in school. You get introduced through friends and just accepting on a whim, maybe a project. I loved the painter story. I mean, I'm like, wow, that's so interesting. And so that happened with me. I got into the industry by accident for sure. Didn't even remember applying for the job. I worked at Sverdrup was my, for those that go way back, might remember that firm. And so I started out doing public outreach and what made me, and then quickly went into um, finance and project management just because I had a background in private banking. So it was completely by accident. I loved it the second I hit it, and I just wanted them to keep on doing more. So I quickly went into project management and started doing different transportation projects. So that was kind of my quick little story.
Great. Thanks, Janice. Kathy, would you like to share your story?
Sure, I'll do the more recent version. I've been at CDW for 32 years, but I was brought on as a field engineer and sort of moved up the ranks, project management associate, then into a principal role. The firm was founded by 3 other people. And so by the time I was moving into an ownership shareholder position, 2 of the 3 had already retired. And so it was the original majority owner woman. And so for me, I'm kind of a gap filler is my, if I had to describe myself, is if there's a need, I will fill it. If there's an opening, I will make sure it is filled, if not by me, but somebody else. So I found that there were a lot of gaps and I kept filling them and filling them and filling them until a point where people were saying, you're already running this company. Is there something maybe you should be doing about that? But there was actually a moment, so if we're talking about moments, where I had a mentor, a WTS mentor, informally for many years. And every time I saw her at a WTS luncheon, I would say, I'm getting close, I'm getting close. And there was one moment where she said, you just have to do it. I'm sure she said it in much harsher terms, like get off the pot. But what she was basically saying was stop talking about it and do it. And so that was that was an inspiration for me to do that, to do that very thing. And so in February of 2017, I was able to make a transition, buy out the former owner, and move into that majority ownership role. Having already felt like I was doing so many things, I was very well prepared to assume that leadership, the final leadership role, and then at that point start to think about what is it that I want to do to make this a better place to work, a better place, more visible, more work, grow the firm. That's my origin story.
Oh, that's great. Some internal reflection with external, taps in the shoulder, right? So, Marion, can you share your story?
Sure. Mine was a series of moments. It was a kind of a midlife change. I had worked at the MBTA 23, 24 years, operations on call 24/7 out, 24/7. So very busy, raising twin boys. I was able to retire from the T and my boys were going off to school. So my life was totally changing. So I thought, and I knew I wanted to work. I loved working and I wanted to continue. So I figured starting a business would be the best choice for me, something I could control and still take care of my children, but still remain in the workplace. So that's what got me to start the business.
Flexibility and balance.
Yeah.
Seda, I would love to hear from you as well.
Yes, good morning. So first off, Gina, I have to compliment you because you said my name flawlessly. And I don't think we talked that one out that much. So very, very nice. You nailed it. So for me, I think it was sort of one critical moment, if you will. I had worked for general contractors for about 24 years. And I just felt like, I was really working hard. I was putting in the time, working out in the field, round the clock on weekends to try to make deadlines. And I felt that I was good at what I did, but I wasn't really getting the recognition that I wanted. And that was it. Really, that was the catalyst for me. I just, I'd receive feedback, and the feedback was negative feedback, or that was a sort of a world where the only feedback you would get would be negative feedback, and you wouldn't get the positive feedback as well. So I felt, underappreciated, and that I knew I could do more, and just decided to go out on my own and give it a shot.
Right. Lots of different influences. So it's great to hear all of your stories. And and along those lines, let's get into starting a business. Each of your stories and paths to owning a business is as unique as the variety of work your firms cover in transportation. For women considering starting a new business for the first time, what's your best advice? And as part of that story, what's a challenge you underestimated and a strength you discovered along the way? Okay, I see Seta, so let's start with you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. This is, I think this is a funny answer, but I underestimated how social I needed to be. It's, yeah, I think with a lot of women that I've heard stories from, it's difficult for me to advocate for myself, right? It's difficult for me to toot my own horn. Um, I felt very shy. I still feel that I have a shyness about me, and the challenge and the strength really sort of go along with that, right? I was able to conquer that, and just by putting myself out there and socializing more and joining, being a part of communities such as WTS, I discovered this strength in me to overcome my shyness and a little bit of, don't feed the fears. Deep down, I knew that I had what it took, but I just didn't know how to bring that out in me. I guess it felt like it was suppressed. Yeah.
Thank you. Marion, let's hear from you.
I didn't have a problem with the social piece. Working in a transit agency for almost 25 years with men and all that, so the social piece didn't bother me. But the amount of paperwork and bureaucracy was overwhelming. And I did learn, I mean, I had all those skills, but I never had to rely on them and be responsible for them completely and all that. So just learning admin skills and still to this day, I do most of my administrative work. I have 23 employees, but I still take, it's just, instead of teaching someone, I find it easier to take control of it. And I think that's a fault of my own, but I that's what I do. So there's a lot to running a business administratively between insurances and workers' comp, and it goes on and on and on. So just be aware of that and get the right support for that.
That's great. A lot of different components, right? The technical and the administrative. Janice, we'd love to hear from you next.
Sure. So first, I have to say I didn't really answer the question directly on that first comment. The reason why I started the company is because everybody said I couldn't. And so again, male dominated, industry for sure. I was always the only woman in the room, typically when I started out. And so that's why I did it. And what I really, really underestimated, and a huge shout out to Lori Chicoine, because Lori and I were pals, and she's the one that kept on saying, you need to do it. You need to do it. You've always talked about it. So I've been that one that always talked about it. What I really, really underestimated is the paperwork, to Marion's point. It is very difficult. to get loans as a small business. A lot of people would think, oh, an SBA loan is out there for small businesses. No, you have to show a track record. And I was pretty shocked I mean, I came in with a lot of people right off the bat. I mean, within 6 months, I was already up to like 8 people. So, for me, it happened very quickly. I needed that loan. I realized very quickly also that government and state agencies, they don't pay quickly, right? I already knew that, but I didn't realize the ramifications it would have on the business. So, you have to really think about what you're marketing. Make sure, absolutely sure, you have a sound vision and that you know how to fund that vision. I don't know how else to say it, but ask for support too. I mean, this panel, like we've been through it all and at different stages. Kathy is our biggest mentor, right, Seda? We're like, Kathy, what do we do? So just lean in, ask, because trust me, everybody else has already been through it. It'll save you a lot of pain, down the line.
Awesome. Love the sisterhood and then the collaboration, right? Kathy,
Sure. I think everybody will agree, and we're going to continue this theme, I'm sure, in these conversations. But it's the don't go it alone is absolutely a powerful piece of advice. That is hard for us. We are strong women. We are resilient women. We don't need any help. We got this. So even asking for help is a challenge, I would say. But I would say one of the biggest things that I underestimated was people's attention span. Because I have a firm, we're just under 30 people. We do civil engineering, we do environmental engineering, compliance, permitting, remediation, polluted sites, hazardous building materials. So we're doing a lot of environmental type services and some civil site engineering as well. So we serve multiple markets. We're serving transportation, we're serving facilities, cleanup, brownfields, land development. So all those different sectors. So there's a set of clients that go with each one of those, and WTS being the transportation one. But my obligation is to be on boards and committees and active in all these other organizations where I can find the architects, where I can find the fire protection engineers, where I can find the developers. And they have very short attention spans. So they're constantly having to go. And I do love it. I'm not Seda. I will go to every party. I will go to every networking event. Bring it on. I gain energy from that. So that is fun for me. So I enjoy it. But at the same time, it's rigorous. There's a lot of time that you really do have to devote to the socializing, to the talking, to constantly reminding people that we are here. And we're ready to work with you, and we're ready to develop those relationships with you so that you can trust us and bring us back again and again and again. But it is constant. My company's 35 years old. We've been doing it forever, but you can never stop doing it. Stay visible. That's my big piece of advice.
Great. I knew there was going to be a wealth of wisdom today. We're gonna move into certification next. I think that's a big question in a lot of people's minds, especially as all of your firms have been certified as Disadvantaged Business Enterprise, DBE, and Women Business Enterprise, WBE, in multiple states. With the changes last year in October 3rd, 2025, interim final rule for the DBE program, it removes race and gender-based presumptions of disadvantage and instead requires all applicants to provide individualized evidence of social and economic disadvantage. All current DBE firms must undergo a reevaluation process to maintain certification, which puts firms in limbo until they are recertified. The rule presents significant changes to the program. So I'd like to ask each of you to briefly answer either of the following questions. What is the certification enabled for your firm, and or how has states and firms how are states and firms addressing the interim final rule? And we'll start with Kathy.
I would say over our long company history, the DBE and the WBE has been a great catalyst for opening doors. Beyond that, it allows us to grow relationships with firms that will put their trust in us as a team member, not just to check a box, although those people appear all the time, and that can open a door, but the door doesn't stay open unless you can build that trust relationship. We don't want to be seen as a commodity. We don't want to be seen as a check the box. We want to know how we can add our value as a partner on the project, on the contract. And those relationships are the things that make our certification as a DBE succeed and our firm allowed to grow. There's a lot of trust in that because you're working for a lot of different clients, and so the value you bring, you're owning your work, you're gaining access to large contracts that you would never ever be a part of given your size and your capacity. So being able to have access to those large projects is really worth it, is all the worth it of all the world. You're gaining experience, you're gaining pride in your work, you're owning your work as it matters for that large project, whatever it is of the work that you're supplying. I guess that's really the value of that certification for us.
Yes. Thank you, Kathy. Let's hear from Janice next.
Okay, so the DB certification process is tough. You know, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It is they ask for everything but your firstborn, and it's a lot of paperwork. In every state that you go in, you have to update this paperwork, and it costs us as a small companies a lot of money to do that. A lot. Plus the other administrative things you have to do. But with that being said, to Kathy's note, without the DBE program, we're not getting in. We're not getting in to these large infrastructure projects, period. Because obviously the large firms, unless you have a very niche service to provide. But other than that, I mean, it makes sense, right? The big firms, they want money, they have goals and objectives that they need to meet. So it's really looking at it from both sides. I get it. But I truly think if you provide the value, if you provide a niche service, if you do good work, doing good work will get you more work. And that's just the way it works. And to Kathy's point and to say it is like, you have to be visible to get the work. So it all plays in together. But I will say that for me to date, thank the good Lord, DBE hasn't really affected me. Maybe 1% of my business went away, maybe. I'm still getting the calls, so I'm thankful for that. But I am concerned on what the certification process will be, and I think we're going to talk about that moving forward and what's really required. But it's going to be tough. It's going to look different, but it's not necessarily always a bad thing. It makes you try harder or look for a different service offering too. But there's so much work out there, I guess is the bottom line, that it really shouldn't matter. You just have to be really strategic and think a little differently about it. That's my viewpoint, though. Like I said, I'm niche. So just so everybody understands what I mean by niche, I do real estate acquisitions, relocations, transit-oriented development, program management, advisory services for anything associated with real estate and housing. So we're pretty niche all in the transportation arena. So.
I mean, I think what I'm taking from this is that you're really staying calm and even keeled, through uncertainty, and I think that is a great strength through this time, and also that you have an array of options, an array of work by specializing.
Exactly, you don't get stuck in a box, so that's helpful because it's going to change. This is going to change like everything else does, and we just have to ride it until they figure it out.
Okay, thank you. Sita, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Yes, please. I think the the oh crap moment already came and went. I think that it was pretty instant. When I heard about it, of course, we all knew something was in the pipeline. It was really I think we all felt that it was inevitable. It's good that the four of us are on this panel together with you as our leader, Gina, because I mean, I agree with everything. I just should say ditto. I agree with everything that Kathy and Janice said. I think I keep sort of waiting for there to be a difference. I keep waiting to maybe not be as busy or not get as many of the calls. I think it's still inevitable. I think that the certification was really like an amazing marketing scenario, I guess, if you will, for us. And there's a lot of firms that we've gained connections with because of that. But then it's keeping the connections, right? And that's by work ethic and really proving to them that it's not the check the box, like we can do this. And a lot of our close partners have remained our close partners, and that hasn't changed at all for us. So far, yes, so good so far. So thank you.
Thanks, Nita. And Marianne?
The DB certification was a tool for me to penetrate the transportation market really when I got started. So I really need, and I have a niche business. I'm hands-on transportation. We can do vehicle testing, CDL training, well, hands-on transportation. So being that niche business, but I had to get them to need me or to want to hire me. So the certification got me in there. And now 15 years later, people know I can do all that hands-on transportation business. So they don't always look for the DVE certification, but I don't think I would have gotten here without it. So, yeah, things are changing. I don't know how that's going to affect me, but it's interesting. And as Janice said too, about working with the large firms, like I work with these large firms. I would never think they'd look for someone of my company of my size, but it's amazing to have that relationship. And that all became because of the DBE certification. So hopefully we'll continue to go forward as it has been going.
Yes, here's hoping. Well, and we'll getting back, to more positives. Wanted to hear specifically from Janice on. I'm sure the audience would love to know, what do agencies or primes often underestimate about working with small women-owned firms?
We're great multitaskers. Women can multitask like no other, and men can communicate. So I think that they underestimate how we will coordinate with all their team members internally to get things done. So we're just going to say, okay, what about this? What about this? And we think it and we bring it together. And I think they underestimate, like, because you hear small firm or woman-owned firm, and you think automatically it's like, oh, we're going to have to, and they say this openly. Oh my God, do we need to train? I'm a little different because I've been in this industry for 35 years plus. I've worked with at a lot of large firms. So I already have the relationship. So again, pretty blessed to have all those relationships, but not blessed. I already proven myself. I should say it that way. I've already proven myself. So they knew me when I started the company. So they knew what I did. So they're like, yeah, we don't do that. Yeah, we need you on these projects. So I was very, very lucky when it came to that. Absolutely lucky. And yeah.
Thanks, Janice. And I just put in the chat our panelists' names and their websites for anyone interested. Also, more information, is in the meeting invitation with bios and more details. So next up, I want to hear quickly from each panelist in 30 seconds or less, what practices have helped you build long-term trust-based client relationships. This relationships has been a theme throughout our session so far. Let's hear from Kathy first.
Sure, and I also want to pile on Janice. Thank you for your answer, Janice. I want to add that we are happy to prove ourselves over and over and over again. Like, we do not rest.
Yes.
We will be there. We will pick up the phone. We will answer that email. We know that our position matters, but we also do feel that we have to constantly prove ourselves. And maybe that's a woman thing, right? And we also know that the team approach is is the best approach. So we want to communicate. We want to see what everybody else is doing and make sure that we are holding up our end and looking for ways where we can increase value. So how do we, what practices have helped build the trust-based relationships is that communication. I think when the primes, our best relationship with primes and agencies is when the communication goes both ways, that the expectations are laid out, and then we can make sure we can meet or exceed those expectations. But if we don't know, if we're left out, if we're excluded from those first couple of meetings, we're already behind because we're not really sure what's happening. And so where it works is where we are included right off the bat and involved. Understanding cash flow is something that the prime can really help us with. And again, like those primes that I want to work with again and again, and they get the calls faster, are the ones that will help. When I call them up and I go, I know you haven't been paid. I get it, pay when paid. But could you float me a little bit? Could you help me out? And they understand, like they're willing to try to find a way to clear the path, clear whatever the obstacles are that is the world we live in. And then right away you're like, I will lay down in front of the truck for you because you have helped me get paid. That those things matter more than anybody ever knows. And my measure of success is when these client relationships have grown to the point where they will call regardless of whether there's a box to check. That means we have grown beyond the box. That's like my super goal of a CDW consultant, grow beyond the box.
Love that. Thanks, Kathy. Seita, what do you have to say?
5 things: honesty, quality, communication, follow-up, and follow-through. That's it. That's what it's been for us. The follow-through is very interesting. I don't know if it's generational. I don't know if it's a male-female thing. But that's the one thing in terms of my workplace that I struggle with the most with staff is sort of just expressing how important it is for both follow-up and follow-through. I think it leads to our success. So
absolutely. If you make a commitment, you'll see it through.
Yep.
Finish strong, right, Seda? You always have to finish strong because that's what they're going to remember in the end. They're not going to remember what great work you did at the beginning.
Nope.
Marion, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Seda hit most of mine, but I was trust, dependability, showing up, and working together toward the solution. Like that's the same, just working with them to get it. We're a team. Once they hire us, we're a team and work together to get the project done. Mm-hmm. I think that's why my relationships are so good.
Yeah, and then that begets good work. Absolutely. Thanks, Marion. And Janice?
Yeah, everything they just said, doing good work, super important, providing that value and the follow through. And I guess what I've noticed a lot, like I'm a huge mentor for men and women, but mostly women. And, trying to get them comfortable in themselves and ask, like, always think about, then what? Then what? Okay, you're going to provide your client with X. Then what? What do you want them to do with that? And so what I found quite a bit, and it's interesting, like, so we do a lot of feasibility studies and planning studies, and our motto is don't let it sit on a shelf, right? So we'll give people a planning study, but we don't give people don't necessarily, I'm just giving an example, don't necessarily give a playbook after the study is provided, right? What should they do in incremental steps to move the needle to get where they ultimately want to go, And I think just providing that extra something, that extra value or going above and beyond, might not even be in the scope. A lot of times I do work out of scope to show that value because we have to Kathy's point, try harder. to get where we need to be, sooner. Again, cash flow is king. So the more projects you get, the more cash you bring in. So you can pay off your loans, so it's all connected, guys. And so I would say that is think about what are the value you can provide to that client that they're not asking for. And from what I found is really saying, here are two great next steps that you could do building off of this plan. They can take it or not take it, but and truthfully, it's been very helpful for us. So if that's helpful for other women trying to do, something, starting a new company or whatever, that's what I would suggest.
Absolutely. I think that's essential because then that's like, in addition to making sure that this work is successful, there's ideas for new opportunities going forward.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, so we're going to take a little pause to give the audience some time to ask questions before we end with a few additional questions, a lightning round, and closing thoughts. So I see there's already some questions in the chat. Please, this is a great time for you all to type your question to our esteemed panelists, and I'll read it out loud. So we do have just for Janice's knowledge, we have another someone with a journalism background here, and that has gone into project management and transportation. So that's fantastic. We have a question. What is the best, this is for any panelist who wants to take it, what is the best strategy for hiring people into a new or small company?
Well, okay, I'm going to take that one, but the strategy part, I don't know if I'm going to answer. I don't know if I'm going to answer the question about being a strategy, but yeah, I guess it's proving sustainability and proving our worth. I think it is a little tricky. I felt that pressure in the beginning. My first employee was someone that I had already worked with, and we had talked about, eventually him coming on board. But then after that, I don't know if my younger self would have taken a chance with my own firm, with a small firm, coming at the time, being, let's say, the third employee other than me. I can remember who this person was, and she was in her 20s. It seems like everybody's in their 20s these days. Some are in their younger 30s, but I don't think I would have done it. I think I would have, who's this firm? What are they? We didn't even really have a good website yet. And I that was the challenge. And so the strategy for me is to sort of, build ourselves up, get our word out there, get our name out there, go on LinkedIn, do the media posts about us, be real, right? Have the insurance, have the 401k, have, a robust training program, like all the things that a larger firm would do so that it would make it, enticing for someone. I actually, this last quick story, we are looking at some people right now, and we interviewed somebody, and one of the questions was, why did you want to answer the post and come in for an interview? And they said, well, we noticed that you won the WTS Employer of the Year award last year. And I thought, yeah, okay, well, that's great, and that's getting yourself out there, and so that you don't seem like, a little tiny firm, get yourself an office, come across legit. So even though we all are legit, you have to kind of show
prove
it.
ourselves.
You have to prove it. Yes. So
I will also jump in. Because we do multiple services, different sectors, we have some flexibility in terms of the qualifications people bring to the table, whether they're engineer, scientists, or related fields. I'm hiring people that maybe are just sideways of where they should be in their career. I've hired people who worked for municipalities that maybe were underemployed or underutilized, but they were working all the environmental programs for this small municipality, so they actually could do all this multitasking. They're just doing it on a municipal level, so they're not paid as well. And so I've recruited those people because I can see that they are so capable. They're just not appreciated. And so I can offer growth, appreciation, movement upwards. And then if that's not what they want, I will lift them up to the next thing that they want to do. Like I can be a pass through as well for people. And that has happened. I've hired teachers who were a little disillusioned with the teaching world, but had a biology degree. So I'm like, okay, let's talk about what you want to do. The one thing I do hire for is curiosity. That's my number one. I want people who want to learn more and more and more, men and women. I worry a little bit about hiring men in senior positions and watching to see whether they will speak well of the woman-owned firm that they work for. Do I send them out to networking events? And then will they use those words? Will they say, I work for a woman-owned firm? And I'm not sure. I'm not sure that if that's a difficulty to be proud of that.
Well, I'll jump in for a sec. So again, I'm niche, but my strategy always was, I definitely worried about it, no doubt. But I had a lot of friends in the industry, which I also knew kind of who was happy, who wasn't, who was looking for a challenge, who like if we really got along, they're like, yeah, I'll come over. But I also, for the niche side, the real estate and really the advisory side, I only go after entrepreneur mindsets. Honestly, I want to interview them one-on-one. And I ask really some probing questions. Why me? I'm looking to see if they're taking notes. I want them to come in with a lot of questions. I want them, to Kathy's point, I want curiosity. But what I sell to everybody that comes in at R&D, I'm going to cross-train you in everything. Even if you're not interested in it, I'm going to cross-train you because at some point in your career, it is going to come up. It takes a lot of time on my part, but I love doing it. It's a favorite part of my job. But it takes you longer to train people because you're training so many at the same time. But it has paid off in spades. And they are 10 years. And that's what I come in and I say, from 10 years and from now, you're going to be ahead of the pack because you're going to know more than anybody else because of the deep training that I give them. It's policy, it's politics. If you don't think politics plays in everything we do, so for them, that was the biggest eye opener. They almost like, you don't know what you're talking about. I'm like, nope, you have to follow the money and you have to follow the politics. If you don't, you're going to lose. And so they got into everything. They're reading articles. They're like, did you see this? Did you see that? Will this change this outcome? I'm like, absolutely could be. And I love that. I love seeing them happy and inquisitive. So I would have to say, I definitely go after more of the entrepreneurs, and I want curiosity.
So a question that ties right into that. I'm hearing a lot that small business, working for a small business brings a ton of opportunity, right? It's a great learning. You can wear many hats, you can multitask and learn many different functions. So this question is, how do you encourage or entice younger staff to see the value and purpose of going above and beyond to follow through on projects if they feel disconnected from the outcomes?
Ooh.
That's a good one.
Don't let them feel disconnected from the outcomes.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure the person that wrote that question, there's a lot that could be there in that disconnected from the outcomes, but that's a great question. So I felt disconnected from the outcomes, right? When I was younger and I was in the workplace, there were certain meetings that I wouldn't go to. I wouldn't be allowed to go to those meetings. There were, for the higher level people, I wouldn't have those opportunities, and I was never given the full picture on something. If we were sitting in the room and brainstorming about something, not everything would be explained to me. So I think the way to prevent people from being disconnected is, even if they're not allowed, or if it's just not, if it's frowned upon to go into some of those meetings, right? And if you're having a meeting with the chief engineer, the MBTA, or the GM, yeah, you can't really control who you bring and who you don't bring, but you need to talk them through the whole entire process, right? So they need to know the big picture. Don't just give them the little picture. They're never going to grow. They're never going to advance. They're never going to be able to become a leader. Teach them what the bigger picture is. Explain to it what the bigger picture is. And then when you have the meeting, go through it and do a debriefing with them, even though they weren't at the meeting, right? So you have to include them and not disconnect them from the outcome is what I would do and what we do.
Spot on. Thanks. Thanks,
yeah, absolutely. You have to communicate is the bottom line. Every step.
How would you recommend, the new question, how would you recommend making yourself heard without fear of damaging relationships or reputation? And there's a statement, being called problematic.
Oh, can I take it for a shot?
Go for
it.
Yeah, I'm dying to hear what you're going to say. Go ahead.
Oh my God, I know. But I will say, whatever you do, don't go in there angry.
Yeah.
Whatever you do, don't do that. It's really hard. Like, I had to get coached on this because I'd be so frustrated that they weren't taking me serious after, like, let's say 10 years in the business. I'm like, but I know this subject inside and out. It would drive me nuts. But what I did always, and I think everybody on this panel knows this about me, I do everything with humor. You know why? Because in the end, it's going to get you there quick. And truthfully, I just hate being like that Debbie Downer. But it's like you have to go in there and actively listen, actively be very pointed in what you're asking for and why you're asking for it. But you have to ask for it. If you don't ask for it, you're never going to get it. So, but you can do it in a way.
Sales 101, right, Janice?
Absolutely. And women do I had a hard time with this when I started out. I had a hard time believing my worth. I had a hard time figuring out balance. I mean, we all do, right? And we're all talking about it. It means something different for everybody. But the only thing I can say, if there's no other takeaway, do it with humor. Don't take yourself too seriously. And be a problem solver. Don't go and say, I want this, this, and this. Say, I'm going to provide this. I would like to do this because I want X. I'll take your notes. I don't care what it is. I just want to be involved. That's, I guess, my recommendation.
I'll chime in also. I think especially if you're the only woman in the room and you have the answer, we have the answers, but they're just not listening to us. I have effectively diffused a lot of conversations by taking a passive tactic periodically as, what can I do to help? And then they have to answer what I can do to help. They have to involve me. I've just offered my help.
Mm-hmm.
You can't ignore me. I'm here to help.
So true. Great.
Okay, we have a question from Jamie Helander. How do you grow your business from sole proprietor to multiple employees thoughtfully and sustainably?
I don't know, but if anybody's figured it out, please fill me in. I just really quick. That's a challenge. We've talked about different challenges, right? We've talked about the amount of paperwork. We've talked about payment. So my employees really mean a lot to me. I feel like I wasn't maybe treated the way I wanted to be treated. And so I really, really want to do right by the people that work for me. I don't want them to be overworked. I don't want them to be underworked. So the balance, this is where I'm going with this. It's the balance. It's very tricky, right? It's the chicken or the egg, right? Do I put, like I'm on the precipice right now, putting my name out there for a few things, but we're thin, right? So I know if I do that I don't want to underdeliver. Okay. I don't want to overwork my people. I don't want to burn them out. I don't want to underdeliver. But then there's timing too. So just because you put your name out there for something, first doesn't mean you're going to get it. Second, if you do, it could be 12 months from now that you get it, right? So the time frame of it all makes it even more challenging to sustain and have the right balance. I like to be lean a little bit with staff. I came from that industry where I don't want to have too many people and then have to let somebody go. The last thing I want to do is let somebody go. So it's very strategic, and it's just really looking and getting yourself out there and trying to figure out what's in the pipeline, when is it coming, and it's a balancing act for sure.
Oh my God, that was so well said, Seda. And
Thank you,
absolutely,
Janice.
oh, absolutely, you nailed it. And it's, I think people have to realize the gap. So in our industry, you have a huge gap of when you get awarded a contract, when you start the work on that contract, you cannot have your staff sitting around. You will lose your shirt. It is the hardest part of being in this industry, managing your business. I will say, really, really have a strong business plan. You need that strong business plan. You need to know your vision. You need to know who your top 3 clients are you're going after, and how are you going to get there. Whoever asked that question, I am more than happy to follow up. I can share you my business plan. It is so important, and you have to check in on this business plan always. Follow the money. That's how you're going to grow. So if I hate to say it, and, again, I go back to politics, blue and red states, we know the red states are getting the money. You have to follow the money. You know what I mean? So it has nothing to do with what you personally believe. This is business. So you have to really kind of follow that, but it's cyclical, right? So right now it's the Republicans. It's going to flip to the Dems. So kind of know when that process is, when it's going to start. So you just have to go with it, but have a good business plan and know what you're selling. Absolutely know what you're selling.
So I'm looking at the timer. I'd like to
Can I
squeeze
just
in
add
one last question. Okay.
one very quickly? So, that was the biggest thing for me that I had to learn when I went into the workplace, because I used to work for a general contractor, right? So the project's advertised. The projects get advertised. You pay attention when the projects are getting advertised. Once they're advertised, they bid within 4 or 5 weeks. And then if everything goes well, within another 4 or 5 weeks, you've got NTP and you're out there working on a project for 5 years, And so the waiting game was very different for me on the being on the other side of things. So I just wanted to add to that.
All right. Thanks, Ada. So I think this last audience question, there's a couple of more in the chat, in the Q&A, but I want to make allow us to switch back and get our final prepared questions in. I think this is quick and I think highly relevant. At what point in this case, Paula's career, is most optional to launch one's own business? At the exec level, when financially independent, or the sooner the better?
All of the above. You have to have, I think, some money. You have to save money. You do. And you have, again, it goes back to your plan, your marketing plan. What are you selling, and how many people do you need to fulfill that, whatever you're selling? And that will tell you what you need, the amount of money you need to, so you have to have money in the bank. You have to I hate to say it, somewhat financially sound in order to go and apply for the loans. So that's really important too. So I guess it all depends. And you have to, my guess would be, I wouldn't suggest doing it less than 15 years, maybe 10, because you don't know enough yet, right? You're still learning. You're still getting your backlog, like your skill sets and your relationships in the industry, I guess is how I'll say it. So you need to have that. It needs to be pretty sound, so then you can play off of that. Otherwise, but again, it goes back to your business model. So I'm kind of answering it, but I'm not. It really depends what you're selling.
I think you also have to be willing to think about the timeline of your commitment. You got a great idea. You love your work, whatever your your thing is that you love to do, you want to do it more independently because there are so many benefits to being independent. But are you still going to want to do that 10 years from now? And do you want to be doing it alone? Like, think about that vision. Think about who you are and where you want to get to. And also think about whether you want it to succeed beyond you. Like, do you have a succession plan? Do you have an opportunity for family members or, mentored younger staff to take over after you? Not that you have to make those decisions right off the bat, but it's part of that visionary process.
If Pat is willing to let me, I'd love to do it. Just a closing question so everyone has a chance to speak. As we look towards the future of transportation in the Northeast with women at the helm, what gives you the most hope?
I'll go. The talent that I see in the pipeline, right? I think groups such as WTS have made it possible for there to be, more women in the pipeline. And the talent that I see with the young men, yeah, they're all right too. The young women entering the industry. I mean, just through some of the privilege I've had of meeting some of these young women at the WTS events, bright, confident. Some of them already know what they want, and that's what gives me hope.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that, Seda. I will also say for those of us who have already been in the industry for a few more years than the younger people, we are still here, right? We're persistent, we're optimistic, we're always hopeful. Like, we don't get beat down easily. we can get pushed aside, we can get sidelined, we can get ignored. It doesn't matter. We're still here. We're still going to show up. We love our work. We absolutely love what we do. And we show that every single day and that allows us to show up, and our staff sees it, and those growing professionals looking for mentorship, they see that we love what we do and they want to do it more. They want to know why it matters. I love the 20 something people, just like Seda was saying, they're in, they love this and they want to know why we're doing it.
Yeah, I would say absolutely the younger generation. It makes it fun, it's just fun. They have a different mindset. They come at things differently. So I think this generation, especially the 20s, I think that some in the 30s and early 40s, it's a little, again, it's different. It's just a different mindset. So yeah, I would say the same thing, the talent. And you know what, there's a lot of really fun, interesting things that are happening in our industry, and we get to grow with it, right? So I think that's what I'm most optimistic about, is really seeing what the next step is. The autonomous vehicles are here. What does that mean next? Like, really getting excited about the next wave.
Thanks, Marion.
The fact that we're all still here, we're thriving. I've had two people approach me recently with contracts, 15-year contracts, and this will be great for you. I said, do you know how old I am? 15-year contract. So they still want us. We're working. I think it's all good. It's the young people coming up, but we're here too to show them the way. And
I love that. Thank you all for joining us. I want to thank WTS for hosting us. Crystal Ann will have some closing remarks. Thank you to our panelists, Kathy, Marion, Seta, and Janice, for bringing energy, honesty, and vision, and so much wisdom to this conversation. Women-owned firms are driving real innovation across the Northeast, and today I made that clearer than ever. I hope you leave inspired, connected, and ready to champion this work. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Gina.
Thank you, Gina.
Thanks,
Great
Gina.
job. Thanks all.
Yes, thank you again, everyone. I can definitely relate to all those panelists as being a small DBE business owner of Susquehanna Civil. A lot of what you said resonates, and it's nice to know, a lot of us are going through the same things across the region, and we're here to support each other in all we do. So wonderful to have both of our panels today. And thank you to these leaders who are making navigating the Northeast possible, all of us. And you can see this list here of over the 4 weeks, all of our amazing panelists and speakers and presenters that covered the region. We had folks from Canada down to DC. And so I think that's amazing how everyone came together. Thank you to our attendees for joining in today. And as we close, we hope you've experienced connection, leadership, and the spirit that really defines WTS. If you are not a member of WTS yet, we'd love if you could continue your WTS journey throughout the year. Please reach out to anyone in your local WTS leadership for more information and to get involved. We'd also like to thank again our WTS International support. We were able to use their Zoom platform, and they helped behind the scenes get us all set up and ready to go. We also wish you a great rest of your Friday. A couple days left here in February, and then I hope everyone has a great rest of their year and a great day. We appreciate you all. Thank you, and goodbye.
Have a good weekend all.